a todos, yo soy Sara.
Y yo soy Diego.
Y somos parte de la comitiva de Encuentros de Apuntes. Ahora para nuestro episodio 6 del podcast decidimos reflexionar en torno al teatro y al juego, así como las maneras en que el público se involucra en las experiencias teatrales.
Y bueno, como parte de esta investigación que realizamos para el episodio, nos encontramos con el concepto del Playable Theatre que llevan desarrollando en Estados Unidos desde hace ya algunos años. Y tuvimos la oportunidad de ponernos en contacto con Celia Pearce, que nos acompaña el día de hoy, cofundadora del proyecto del Playable Theatre y profesora de la Northeastern University, quien amablemente aceptó una entrevista el día de hoy para contarnos un poco más acerca de este proyecto y de estos conceptos. Pero antes de eso quisiéramos dar una breve descripción de cómo estamos ahorita para las personas que no nos están viendo. Eh, bueno, yo soy Diego, soy un hombre con el cabello negro, medianamente largo, con peinado de, ¿cómo se llama? De cortina. Y tengo las cejas pobladas y traigo una sudadera color aqua, verde azulado. Atrás de mí hay un cuadro con una pintura cubista, nos dijo Celia, y y una pared blanca. Ese soy yo.
Y yo soy Sara Vega, soy una mujer, tengo el cabello largo y oscuro, tengo unos lentes grandes cuadrados, mis ojos son cafés, mis facciones son redondas, traigo una playera tipo polo color naranja, en mi fondo hay una pared de ladrillos y nos encontramos Diego y yo en espacios distintos físicamente en diferentes cuadros de esta plataforma de Zoom. También quisiéramos pues a comenzar diciendo que esta es una charla completa que estamos haciendo con Celia, pero también algunos fragmentos de esta charla se van a utilizar para el episodio 6 del podcast de Apuntes, que les invitamos a que lo escuchen. Están en todas las plataformas para que lo puedan escuchar. También va a estar aquí en YouTube.
Y habiendo dicho eso, démosle la bienvenida a Celia. Welcome, Celia. Hello. How are you?
Hola, yo soy Celia, and I'm going to describe myself in English. I have a reddish copper cut bob haircut, parted on the side. I'm wearing round tortoiseshell eyeglasses. My top is a blue pattern, kind of abstract pattern, and I'm sitting in front of a painting by Vincent van Gogh called Almond Blossoms. Also, I'm wearing magenta lipstick.
Thank you, Celia.
Thank you. And is there anything you would add to our brief description of your work and your of your
About
work
yourself, yeah?
about yourself?
I mean, it's difficult to be brief just because I've been around a while, but a few key points that I think are relevant to the conversation. One of them is that I used to be a theme park designer. So for many years, I worked designing interactive attractions for theme parks and museums. And this is very much informing my current work in playable theater. I'm also the co-founder of IndieCade, which is the co-producer of the Playable Theater Symposium, which is happening Friday and Saturday of this week, August 15th and 16th. So those are all factors in how I ended up here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Celia. What would you think if we start with the interview?
Go ahead.
Okay. First, like for all the people in Latin America and Mexico that are hearing us, we would like to introduce the concept of playable theater. How would you define the concept playable theater? What is the origin of the concept? What's the story behind it?
So we were trying to figure out a really simple and very clear term to describe theater where the audience has consequential agency. And this is kind of our central theme is as an audience member, I go to a live show and my presence makes a difference. So I know that if I wasn't there, the show would be different. So that's the sort of key underlying principle of our organization and also of the term playable theater. The origin of it is kind of a funny story, actually. So when I first started the project with Danny Snyder-Young, who was a theater faculty member at Northeastern, I was calling it the Analog Holodeck Project. And I don't know if you are familiar with the Star Trek property, but the holodeck is, of course, a virtual immersive holographic play space. And yes, exactly. And the idea of that came out of the fact that I was doing a lot of live action role playing and participatory theater. And I thought, oh, the holodeck is here. It's just not digital. And so that was the first title of the project. And when we started talking to people about it, of course, you kind of have to be a Star Trek nerd to know what that means. And turns out quite a lot of theater people are not Star Trek nerds. Who knew? And so, we played around with a few different terms, but we settled on playable theater, and it's partially inspired by. There's a program at UC Santa Cruz here in the United States called Playable Media, and we really liked the idea of using playable as a modifier to theater as a really clear way to explain what we're talking about, in part because we really like the idea of the emphasis being on play, that the audience is playing along with the piece. And so that seemed to really stick. And I just got back from the Worlds in Play retreat, which was in this beautiful retreat center in Illinois. And a lot of people there have started adopting the term. So I'm really happy that people find it useful as a way to describe the work that they're doing. For me, playable theater spans a range of practices. It can on one side, it can be immersive theater with audience participation, but it can also overlap with live action role playing. Usually when I'm talking about the overlap with live action role playing, there is a sort of a place in the middle where live action role playing can be done in what's called a high fidelity production value, which is similar to playable theater. And really the main difference, I'm imagining I should make some kind of a chart to describe this as I'm saying it. The main difference to me is just the ratio of actors to players, right? So in LARPs, there are usually very few people that are not players, whereas in playable theater or theatrical performances, there tend to be more actors and varying amounts of audience members participating depending on the piece. Sometimes I've been in some shows where there might even be more actors than audience members in some cases.
And tell us more. We know there is this community of the Playable Theater Project, and that you co-found. Tell us about this organization, this community. How does it works? What do you do?
Yeah, so it's funny you asked me this because we're actually in the process of transitioning. We've just revamped our mission statement, which unfortunately I don't have right in front of me. Otherwise, I would tell you what it is. But we really started out with a couple of ideas in mind. One was that we wanted to bring people together across disciplines. So one of the key things here is that we embrace people across that range of practices that I was talking about. We really wanted people in both of those spaces to come together. And initially, why I wanted that, and we started the project with a playable theater game jam, which is something I think we want to do more of. This was a methodology that was developed by the chairman of our board, Sam Liberty, and it's basically the idea of bringing together people to create. I don't know if people are familiar with a game jam, but a game jam is usually a short, could be anywhere from 2 days to a week or a week and a half event where people get together and quickly generate ideas and make prototypes of games. And so we thought it would be cool to apply that same methodology to participatory theater. And we invited people from across that spectrum of live action role playing and theatrical performance to come together on the Northeastern campus. This was in 2018, and to brainstorm and come up with ideas. And what ended up happening as a result of that, which was very positive, was that although there was only one project that has been produced to date, many new collaborations were born. And that was really what we wanted to see happen. That was like the main goal, was to bring people together across disciplines, because a lot of the challenges that each side is facing are handled well by the other. So like LARPers know a lot about things like how to structure interaction with the audience, what sorts of things the person running the show need to do, how to create an environment of safety, and so forth. On-ramping is a term that a lot of theater people have learned from LARP people, which is how do you get the audience members to the point where they can fully engage with your project. Now, the challenge here is LARPs often require a lot of homework. So usually there's something you have to read ahead of time. Sometimes you have to do a workshop that can be as long or longer than the actual live action role-playing game. This is not acceptable to theater people, understandably. So we're trying to work with different techniques for kind of lowering what we call the overhead of interaction for audience members, while at the same time giving them some way to know what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to interact with the show. So that's just a creative conversation we've been having. Also, the idea of creating a community. One of the things I found, I actually did some traveling and meeting some people across different areas, and I was in London right around the time that we did that game jam. And I found that I went to an event with like all the immersive theater people in London, basically. And I asked them if any of them ever talked to each other, and they said no. So I saw this as an opportunity. And one of the things we've been doing since we started in 2020 is when we started the nonprofit. We started it in March of 2020. I don't know if you remember what happened in March of 2020, but it wasn't a great time to start an organization focused on live events. Let me just say that.
Yes.
But we were able to kick off along with collaborating with IndieCade, which is the independent game festival that I co-founded, we were able to kick off an online symposium. And that is what's happening this coming week. I think this is going to be our 4th symposium. And we've been doing these now since we started. And they're really, again, about bringing people together and having these kinds of conversations and introducing people to the kinds of work that are being done across disciplines. So that kind of interdisciplinary conversation is really like at the heart of what our organization is about. And just getting people to talk to each other. Even people within the same discipline often don't talk to each other, especially in theater. The lab community is pretty cohesive, I think, especially in Europe. But for whatever reason, at least when we started, the theater folks who were doing this work really were not in any kind of dialogue with one another. And so now we've really created a platform, along with other people who are also working in the same space, to just allow people to come together, share ideas, share knowledge, find out what other people are working on, play test, and so forth.
Yes, I think it's amazing, this interdisciplinary work. I think it's a need here in Mexico, and I think in the world, in the whole world. I don't know if you said I wanted to ask this other question about the play.
Yes, Celia, we were thinking like before we had like the pleasure to talk a little more about about the term to play and why is it important, but we would like to talk more about it. Like, why do you think it's important to play at the theater? Why do you think it's important to play in our society? Why is playing important, and why would you create um, a concept, and why is it important? Like, yeah.
In the
I
audience.
mean, that's a huge question, but it's very much at the heart of my work. I have always focused on designing games, or primarily focused on designing games for adults. So over time, I've also done intergenerational games, but I think adult play is super important. And in my scholarly research, I focused on emergent cultures in adult play spaces, particularly online games and also fandom. So I've done some work around cosplay. I made a short documentary called Conventional Dress about cosplay at Dragon Con with my students. And then my new book, Play Frames, really talks a lot about this. And there are a couple of things that I think are really important about that. And by the way, there's a ton of scientific research now that backs this up, that play is good for us. It's good for our well-being. It's good for our brains. It helps our physical health, particularly social play, right? In the US, we're talking a lot about the loneliness epidemic, and it's really affecting the most harshly teenagers and older adults. Those are the people who are suffering the most from the loneliness epidemic. So the more we can bring people together across generations in playful spaces, I think it's not only good, good for art, but it's also good for society. It's good for people's health and well-being. So in that sense, I think it's really important. Also, I've written a little bit about this in Play Frames, but historically, societies always had these kind of ritual events, which were in a way fused with play. And actually, one of the examples that I use is from Mesoamerica, which is the original game that appears to be similar to soccer.
The ball game.
Played. The ball game, exactly. And the ball game is very interesting to me because in the book, I talk about the fact that up until Judeo-Christian religion became pervasive, all sports were part of religious rituals. And everybody that I've said this to is like, whoa. And then they try to figure out if there's a sport that wasn't, and nobody has been able to come up with one yet. And so I talk particularly about this ritual because I think it is a situation where ritual and play are the same thing. They're not disconnected as they are today in society. And I think for really millennia, most play and ritual were indistinguishable and very integrated. Adult play anyway. Children's play, there's other things going on that I don't really study, but and I think what's happened is as we've become a more secular society, meaning that the religious practices have separated themselves from other day-to-day activities, adults have lost that sense of play. And I think getting that back is something that I've been very committed to for my entire career, is creating, and particularly for me, multiplayer social spaces, whether those be online or in person. My whole thing is social play and particularly emergent behavior. So emergent behavior meaning things that players do that are not anticipated by the designer. And my earlier book with MIT Press, Communities of Play, is about an online community of game refugees. And this is kind of what happened in terms of my trajectory of getting where I'm getting, which is that around the mid-teens, people were starting to submit theatrical works to IndieCade. And in 2017, the winner of the Best Game Design Award was a play.
Mm-hmm.
And so I began to think about I saw some kind of zeitgeist coming, and I began to think about, okay, well, what does it mean to bring game thinking, for lack of a better way to put it, to theater? I'd already been LARPing for a while at this point. But then I had this thought was, I wonder if I can apply some of the design principles I learned from online games and emergent behavior to live experiences. And so that's my personal kind of creative trajectory, and what I'm interested in is the social. And this is kind of an indirect way of getting back to your question, Sarah, which is play allows for emergent behavior because it's unpredictable and spontaneous. And so over and over again, I have seen this in my own work and other people's playable theater work. I see people doing things that the creators had not planned on. One of the first examples I ever saw of this was people stealing candy at Sleep No More. And that I was like, everyone was following actors, and I was like, "Whoa, what are these players doing?" Right? Um, and the other thing that I saw there that really also inspired me in this way was, have you guys seen Sleep No More? Has there been a version of it in Mexico at all?
In
No.
Mexico? No.
It's kind of the most famous, immersive
Yeah.
piece, and it's for what it is, it's brilliant, but it also has I feel some shortcomings. But they put everybody in masks, and what I saw happen that really, really blew me away was there was an actor in this room, and there were all these audience members in masks, probably 30 people in this little tiny room, and they were like this far away from the actor, literally like breathing down this guy's neck. And he stood up, and everyone separated, and they backed up, and he walked across the room, and then they all moved over and went around him at the other desk when he sat down. And I saw this happen with a large group of people who had been, by the way, given no instructions. They were just given a mask, and that was it. And to me, what I saw there was a three-dimensional fourth wall.
Yeah.
I saw that these audience members, and perhaps the mask was part of it, were were observing the fourth wall, but in this very emergent and spontaneous way. They never touched the actor. They never said anything to him, but they kept this aura around him, right? And to me, I saw that as a missed opportunity, because I thought, what if those players could do something to change the show?
Yeah.
Yes. Like,
So, yeah,
no, sorry,
go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Like we were thinking that it's also important for the audience, for the people, the spectators, the people that are attending, to also be part of the experience. Like we were, like Diego and I were reflecting some days ago, that at least here in Mexico, not a lot of people go to theater, and there's a lot of people who have never ever in their life gone to a theater before. So we were thinking, like, why is it like that people aren't attracted to the theatrical experience? Like we were thinking that it's very important, to for us as artists, as creators, to reflect on what kind of dynamics, what kind of experiences are we interested as people, as Mexicans, as a community. And we were reflecting that games and playing, it's a very like a very close sensation to us humans. Like we have played since we were born. Like playing is part of our day-to-day life, as pretending,
Yeah.
in joking, as in using things to create other things, like that kind uh, of, of of way of being as humans. And
Yeah.
yeah, we were thinking that it's very important for us, as artists, to not like to embrace that, to use
Yeah.
that to create more experiences, more meaningful experiences for our community. Like,
And it's and
Yes.
and it's one of the biggest questions, no? In like for the whole last century in theater, why would a person go to theater instead of cinema, or instead of watching a TV show? No, it's because of the contact with other people. But if the contact with other people is staying
also a
like
fourth wall, right?
chained in
Right.
the
Right. And
chair.
you hit the nail right on the head with that, because one of the questions that comes up over and over again is, why is this live? If the play is the same every time any person sees it, then why is it live? Right?
Yeah.
It might as well be a
Of
movie.
course.
And
Yeah.
furthermore, people can get incredibly high production value, a seemingly infinite amount of television and film in their homes. So why would they get up out of their chairs, pay a bunch of money, and go somewhere else to sit and be passive and consume passive? Right at the same moment that this is happening, and I think you're really onto something with this, because I think we are in many people have called this like participatory culture, right? This is a term that Henry Jenkins kind of pioneered. that we're in a moment where many people are making content. This is something I talked about in my very first book in 1997, where I said, if you let people interact with media, eventually they're going to want to make it. And so that is here, that has come to pass, right? Everybody makes media now, right? And so the idea of the one-to-many broadcast model, right? It works great if you're sitting on a couch at home, but once people leave their homes, they don't want to sit and be broadcast to,
Yeah.
right? They want to have more engagement. And here's a really interesting little tidbit, which is, I don't know about Mexico, but the escape room industry is one of the fastest growing sectors of games.
Yeah.
And that's true in China, it's true in the US. I'm assuming it's also true in Mexico. That is an example of what people would rather do than going to the theater,
Yeah.
right? And
Yes.
why would they rather do it? It's fun, it's social. You cannot do escape room by yourself. It is a very creative and innovative field right now. People are making really cool projects. It's very cottage industry. Like most of the people I've met who do escape rooms have no prior experience with any other kind of entertainment, right? They're just like, we had an idea, so we built an escape room. It's right. It's very
Wow.
like, I love the ethos of it because it's very like kind of just people are just making cool stuff who've never made anything like that before.
Without
And
categories.
yeah, and they were really hit hard during the pandemic, but then they came back even stronger afterwards. And you have to realize, like, I believe the first escape room in the United States was built in 2014. And now, less than 10 years later, they're everywhere, right? And I think this really tells you something about what's happening with the sort of zeitgeist for live entertainment is we want to go out and be with our friends and family and socialize. And also escape rooms are fun because they kind of make you feel smart, right?
Mm.
They're multimodal, I think, which is really important right now as we're starting to really acknowledge neurodiversity. I've played escape rooms multiple times. I am I just heard this great term, neurospicy. I am neurospicy, and I played with other people who are also, and each of those people can find something in that multimodal space that they can connect with. And I think Playable Theater does that same thing. I've been in shows where like there are people who like to solve puzzles and they work on the puzzles, and there are other people who like to talk to actors, so they go out and get the clues from the actors, and it just gives everybody a different way of being in that space. Going back to your comments, Sarah, like not only playing, but playing the way that works best for my brain and my body. And even if I have a physical or a mental disability or whatever, I can find a way to play in that space. So, and then the other thing I wanted to add is one of the things I've learned as I've been studying theater in the last few years is in the US, um, in my world, whether it's LARPing or video game design, which is what I teach at Northeastern, most of the people I'm around are younger than me. Typically, millennials or younger. Like I don't really interact that much. When I started going to online theater events and even in-person theater events, I noticed something really interesting was that most of the people were older than me.
Yeah.
And from what I'm able to discern, many of them were retired. And the economics of theater in the United States is entirely dependent on these people being members of theaters and paying an annual fee. And these people are passing away. And as they do that, the theater industry has less and less financial support. And this is really the mechanism they've been dependent on for decades. And there's nobody replacing those theater supporters as they phase out. And so what's happening is theaters are closing, they're shortening their runs. I think Broadway in New York is probably one of the few exceptions, but that's a very mainstream audience that they're going
Yeah.
to and the tourist audience. But like in local theater and even in LA, like the music center there had to close a play early. So I think it's a really rough time for theater. And I think that unless people in the theater industry are willing to reassess where they're going, a lot of theaters are going to end up closing in the coming years because of this. I don't know what it's like in Mexico. You were saying people don't go. I mean, here I think people do go, but they're older people and they're dwindling in terms of their population. And as other people get older, they're not going to theater. So
Those are hard words, but I think here in Mexico, it's not so far from that what's happening there. Um, but well, we wanted to know about this playable theater community you're growing. Uh, what activities do you do? You told us about the symposium, about
About the
these
game
game
jams.
jams, but what other activities that you do? And and here, for example, here in Mexico, how we can get close to those activities or the project in general? What can you?
it's interesting that you say that, because I think that starting during the pandemic was really a challenge. Like we literally, I mean, we put our papers in, our nonprofit papers in, and then like 2 weeks later, everybody was sent home for 2 years. And so,
Yeah.
so it made it really difficult for us to pursue some of the things we wanted to do. So it's kind of amazing to me that we were even able to survive that with this online symposium, which is, doing very well and well attended, and people really like it. And one of the great things about doing an online event is that we record everything, and we just in the last 3 months released all the videos from all of the prior events. So you can now, the way we've set it up is there are sort of highlights on the IndieCade YouTube page, and then members of either IndieCade or Playable Theatre get access, and any attendee of past or current. So if people want to go to the Playable Theatre symposium, say this weekend, they would automatically get access to those videos. So we have now developed this massive archive of amazing talks by people in the space. So that is something I think we want to, leverage and make available to more people. Then we have also been talking about a couple of things. We did, right in that first year, we did a special issue of a journal called Well Played. They invited us. They actually heard about what we were doing and said, would you like to do a special issue about this? And so we did that. And I think we're going to want to do more publishing like that going forward. We also have a blog which is underpopulated with content, because as I've learned throughout the last few years, as actors and theater people don't tend to like to write. they like to write plays, but they don't really want to write essays or blog posts. But I'm slowly getting some traction from people who want to write about things, particularly emerging scholars who have ideas that I would like them to share with the public. I'm trying to really also bridge the gap between academics and practitioners. And so our hope is to get some more publications out. And we're not sure yet if that's going to be, we're going to start our own journal, or we're going to do some more special issues, or how exactly that's going to work. But it's been really interesting to note in the last year, that a bunch of new books have come out on this topic. We're going to have, in addition to, I'm going to be giving a talk about play frames, but we also have Elizabeth Hunter, who has a new book out. And then there's this great new book, Dramaturgies. It's called Play, Dramaturgies of Participation, which is about Canadian interactive theater. And one of the authors of that will also be speaking, Mo Harner. So I think there are more people now writing, which is a good sign for us, because that means if we do a journal, or we do, we'll be able to get more content generated in text form. So that's a hope.
Yeah.
And then I think one of our long-term goals has always been to develop some kind of, educational stuff, for lack of a better, it's very interesting to us, for instance, that, if you are an actor and you're going to theater school and you want to act in playable theater or interactive theater, you can't really take an acting class that teaches you how to do that right now. So I work at a university. Many of the other people also work at universities. I think it's probably too early for universities to embrace this,
Mm.
but we can create educational programming workshops or whatever to help people. And many theaters do that. Like we have a theater here in Boston that has acting and clowning classes and stuff like that. So I think we could provide some scaffolding and some learning for people, you know, like yourselves who want to get into this, but there's not really any place you could learn, say, how to write an interactive script or how to
Mhm.
act for participation, or those things just don't exist yet. I find throughout my career, it's always been the young people that are driving whatever I'm doing forward, despite the fact that university people don't get it. The students
Mhm.
keep showing up and wanting it. And so
Yeah.
um, we might develop some coursework like that as a result. We're going to deploy a survey after the symposium, and we're hoping to capture, and we're also going to be doing a town hall as well. So we're going to basically be sharing our revised mission and then getting feedback from people about what they want and what they need, like what would be the most useful um, things for us to provide. And also, um, we do have this nonprofit, which is kind of underutilized, but it basically allows people to have a fiscal sponsor. So in the US, if you want to get certain grants, you have to have called a 501c3, which is a status as a nonprofit organization. And most theater companies don't have that. And so if they want to get a grant, they need to have what's called a fiscal sponsor, and we have that ability
Mm.
to provide that to people if they need it. Not a lot of people have used it yet, but it has been helpful to those who have. Let me just say that.
Okay, and Celia, last, would you like to share us your social media platforms, if you have any other way so we could follow your work or the Playable Theater work?
I am not super active on social media. The Playable Theater organization, it tends to use Facebook to announce the things that we're working on. So that's a pretty reliable place to go. We have a website, which is just playabletheater.org. We also have a Discord, which right now is not very heavily used. Um, we just, I don't know, Discord is one of those things where like some Discords are very, very active and some aren't, and we're not really sure why. I think part of it is, again, theater people are not really on Discord. It's a popular platform for game people.
Yeah.
But weirdly, like my swing dance community has a very active Discord group. So I don't really know what the secret sauce
It's
is
strange.
for making but our blog, I'm hoping our blog our blog is on Medium, but you can get to it from our website. I would really like to, and I'd love to invite you two to contribute as well if there's anything you want to write about. For like, it's great for something you're thinking about or that's not really ready to be published in a peer review situation, or just, something you've
Mhm.
experienced, a review of a show. I just did a review of this really cool show that I saw a couple of months ago on there. There's a lot of, you know, it's very open-ended, but just a place for people to share ideas and thoughts. So those are the
Yeah.
main places you can find us. And hopefully, I don't know if the podcast will be out before this weekend, but hopefully people will come to the symposium on the 15th and 16th of August. And also, we're going to be announcing there, you're getting this ahead of time, that next year we will be doing the Playable Theater Symposium in person in Cincinnati.
Oh.
So yeah, so we're super excited about that and really want to let people know that we hear you. People kept saying, we want to be in person, we want to be in person. So what we decided to do was alternate. So we're going to be doing in person every other year and online every other year. So that way, people like the people that are going to be joining us from China, for instance, can easily join us online. It's harder for them to get to the US, obviously. So we didn't want to completely wipe out the online event because I think it's been really good for the international community. But people do want to see each other in person and get together. So that's what we're
Yeah.
going to be doing next year.
Well, thank you very, very, very much for telling all of this stuff here. I think here in Mexico, and as I think in Latin America and in other parts of the world, it's this impulse of breaking the walls of of
Mhm.
in between disciplines, between countries,
Us
between
communities.
between
Yeah.
communities, yeah. And here is a great example of it. No, here we have a lot of participatory theater and another experience that involves the agency of the public, but we didn't call it playable theater. But it's amazing to know in other parts of the world, from other disciplines like game design, we get to know, we get to combine disciplines to make new stuff. And so
Yes,
I'm very
and
sorry. I'm
that
very thankful.
that that is a really good point because the theme for this year's symposium is crossing boundaries. And that's all the boundaries that you're talking about, the disciplinary, the international, et cetera, and also the boundaries between players and actors and theater content. And I just want to say one final thing too, which for me personally, I part of the reason I'm so sort of dedicated to agency in theaters because I think it empowers people. And we're at a point right now, at least in our country, where people feel disempowered and disenfranchised. And I think for people to have the ability to know that their actions make a difference is really, really important right now. And so playable theater gives the opportunity for people to exercise their agency in a play space as a way of thinking about how they can exercise it more in real life. So I
Yeah.
think that's a really important concept. I think it's one of the reasons why it resonates with younger people as well, because they really want to have more agency. And this is a place where they can have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
So thank you again so much, Celia. We need to wrap this up. That we have to end this interview. We really hope to see more of the Playable Theater project soon here in Mexico or in Latin America. That would be great. Um, and yeah, thank you so much for your time. Y muchas gracias a todos los que nos escucharon por su tiempo, por estar aquí. Les recordamos que esto es una entrevista completa, pero vamos a utilizar fragmentos para el podcast que se va a publicar en las redes de audio. Diego, no sé si quieres decir algo.
Pues nada más agradecer a la Filmoteca de la UNAM, de la cual pertenece la Cátedra Bergman, a la cual está afiliada, a Teatro UNAM y a nuestros compañeros y compañeras y compañeros de la comitiva de Encuentros de Apuntes y pues a las personas que escucharon esto o lo vieron y pues a Celia Pearce, nuestra invitada de hoy, y pues eso sería todo. Muchas gracias.
Muchas
That,
gracias y los esperamos.
muchas gracias.